The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called Yo1 Wellness Center. The Yo1 Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Hello and welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. As the Russia-Ukraine war drags on and continues to dominate global headlines, the one question that remains unanswered for over a year now is who is winning? And while we still don't know the answer to that question, there are many other questions that are waiting to be answered, like this one. How prepared is Russia really for the continuing war? What about Ukraine? And where do things stand as of now? Also, a fresh question. Has this war exposed the vulnerability of Western weapons? Have a look at what's happened over the last few hours. Moscow has claimed that US-made Patriot missile defense system being used by the Ukrainian forces has likely suffered damage from a Russian air attack. Moscow also says it has downed the UK's Shadow Storm missile. And Ukraine denies reports of the Patriot system being damaged. Reports, however, saying the US and Ukraine are already in talks for the repair work. On Gravitas tonight, in just a bit, we piece together the developments and get you the bigger picture. Also on the show for you tonight, why was the Quad summit in Australia cancelled? Why has Biden cancelled his trip? Is the debt ceiling crisis in America the real reason, or is there more to this? We get to the story of the world's highest Shiv shrine, the tilting Tungnath temple. We tell you what the Archaeological Survey of India is saying. Artificial intelligence is soon going to become a part of the school syllabus in Sri Lanka. We tell you why. How unsafe really is the UK's Parliament building? We tell you what the lawmakers there are saying. And we are starting off with news just coming in this minute. It concerns Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Reports at this point saying that on Tuesday night, the royal couple, along with Meghan Markle's mother, Doria Ragland, were involved in, quote-unquote, a near-catastrophic car chase. Let me repeat that, a near-catastrophic car chase after being followed by the paparazzi. Now, this incident, as per the latest coming in, apparently happened after the couple attended an award ceremony in New York. And this is what their spokesperson has said in a statement. Let me just quote from it at this point. Last night, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Miss Ragland were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians, and 2 NYPD officers. That's what the statement says. Now, their spokesperson has further added that while being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Now, interestingly, the New York Police Department did not immediately confirm having any knowledge about the incident. Now, earlier as well, Prince Harry has spoken about press intrusion into the life of the royal family members, which he blames for the death of his mother, Princess Diana. Diana, remember, was killed in a high-speed chase in the year 1997 after trying to flee the paparazzi who had been following her while she drove through Paris. And some media reports claiming that the erratic behavior of the paparazzi chasing the car caused the crash. Others said that Diana's driver lost control of the vehicle at high speed while being intoxicated by alcohol. Now, whatever be the case, this incident, if true, bears an eerie resemblance to the events that unfolded right before Princess Diana's death. Let's just go straight across at this point to our correspondent Susan Teherani, who's with us from New York. Also with us at this point is royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Let me just come to you first, Susan. Help us better understand what we know at this point. What is the latest coming in?
Right, as you rightly mentioned, this is something that we learned about just maybe less than an hour ago. And the reason we learned about it because of the spokesperson for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. What's interesting is while we haven't heard from the NYPD and while this elaborate car chase apparently happened here in Manhattan in a span of 2 whole hours without anyone being able to stop it, which is just, it's unprecedented, unheard of. But we might be able to get more facts from 2 NYPDs that the spokesperson for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle talked about in his statement. He said that there were 2 police officers with them. These are usually provided to people like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle just for security reasons. But I think if they speak up and speak out, then we'll get a better understanding about what really happened.
Absolutely. Stay with us, Susan. Let me also get in royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams onto the conversation. Richard, thanks very much for being here with us. What do you make of this incident? What is your initial reaction? And naturally, parallels are being drawn with the Diana incident.
Absolutely. I was shocked when I heard it, and the details are quite extraordinary. We don't know the circumstances exactly regarding their particular security, whether or not they were in a taxi, or if so, whether they had security with them. But we're talking about Harry, Meghan, and her mother, Doria Ragland. And this should have gone on over some 2 hours, and they were apparently being pursued by 6 or so we understand, vehicles which contained or appeared to contain aggressive paparazzi, and that in fact the police were involved too, the 2 New York Police Department officers. I mean, very clearly we need firstly an explanation for the New York Police Department of exactly what happened, and we understand that allegations regarding breaches of the law. Well, I mean, has someone been arrested or cautioned? I mean, this is a most scandalous incident, and of course it will, Harry is still haunted, as we know, by the tragic death of Princess Diana. And the paparazzi were, of course, partly responsible, without any doubt for that. And I had understood that the paparazzi, though obviously present, were far less powerful these days than they used to be. So this is an extraordinary and desperately destructive incident. And as I say, we await further details.
Right. Susan, I want to go back to the statement of the spokesperson, a quote-unquote near catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi. We are talking about New York, and anyone who listens to the words car chase and New York together immediately wonders how is that even possible on the busy streets of New York City?
Yeah, the fabric of New York has really changed in recent years. I mean, this incident happened more likely than not in Manhattan, and at the end of the day, Manhattan is an island. And I'm sorry, excuse me. Manhattan is an island, so it's very difficult to try to maneuver around it for 2 whole hours. And then you have outdoor dining, you have the bike lanes, you have individuals, pedestrians. And what has been remarkable is through this 2-hour chase, no one was hurt, which is a blessing on the one hand, but on the other hand, again, we have to learn more about the facts of the incident that really happened. But I do want to say that, just regarding New York's paparazzi culture, they are, for the most part, very considerate because this is a hub for a lot of celebrities and politicians and famous individuals. And so everyone is more or less used to it. And for New Yorkers, they're not really, fascinated by the culture of celebrity. So that's one aspect of it I think we should note. And another aspect of it, I think the big question is the fact that they know they're going to be photographed, paparazzi, just regular people. Why were they running away?
Right, Richard, I want to come to you at this point, and this comes close on the heels of news reports regarding Prince Harry's security and police protection. Prince Harry should not be allowed to pay for his own police protection while in Britain. Because wealthy individuals should not be able to buy specially trained officers as private bodyguards. This is what lawyers for the British government have told a court on Tuesday itself. What do you make of this?
Well, very clearly, I mean, the cases involved Harry being extremely unhappy about what he regards, since he and Meghan stepped down as being senior working royals, as the way his security is being handled, the fact it was downgraded after they stepped down. He's challenging the Home Office in court for that, and also he is, this may possibly go to court too, he wants to pay for his security. He wants to pay, so to speak, for police, which are normally taxpayer funded. Now, of course, it raises questions as to whether a wealthy person can do that when someone else cannot. But there's no doubt that this is being heard at the moment. And there's no doubt also that we know that they have definite security concerns. We also know, of course, that Los Angeles is considered very much the worldwide capital, so far as there is one, of paparazzi. And the fact that this happened in New York, as you've been hearing, I mean, it is an extraordinary thing to have happened. And that it went on for over 2 hours, and why they ran away and so forth, while we were driving away. All these things, the statement has been put out by sources close to the Sussexes. There's no doubt at all that Harry will be, and we know he's undergoing therapy anyway, and has been so deeply affected by his mother's death. I mean, this will undoubtedly deeply hurt and anger him, because we've been told it's near catastrophic. We do, however, need to know and have official confirmation of precisely what happened.
Right. Right. Richard and Susan, thanks very much for being here on the broadcast and helping us with those inputs and perspectives, leaving it there for the moment. Shifting focus for now. Is the war in Ukraine exposing the vulnerability of Western weapons? Russia has pictures to prove that it has destroyed the billion-dollar weapon in Ukraine. America has accepted the veracity of the claim. I'm talking about the Patriot missile system, one that was considered invulnerable. Americans use words like proven reliable when talking about the Patriot, and Russia claims to have hit one of these systems.
A high-precision strike by a hypersonic missile system, Dagger, in the city of Kiev, a US-made Patriot anti-aircraft missile system, was hit.
And not just that, Russia also says that it has downed the British Storm Shadow missile, another weapon that was considered top class.
Air defense systems intercepted 7 HARM anti-radar missiles, 1 Storm Shadow long-range cruise missile, and 10 HIMARS launched missiles during the day.
Which brings me back to my question. Is the Ukraine war exposing the vulnerability of Western weapons? Let me just tell you a little bit about the Patriot itself. It stands for Phased Array Tracking Radar for Intercept on Target. It is one of the most advanced US air defense systems. It can intercept and destroy cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, also an aircraft. In fact, the Patriot was first deployed in the 1980s. In 2003, in Iraq, the Patriot is said to have defeated every ballistic missile it engaged. The Patriot is very expensive. It is estimated to cost around $1.1 billion. The system alone costs $400 million. This includes the command unit, the control unit, a generator, radars, launchers. There are 8 of them, and they can hold up to 4 missile interceptors each, and all the other support systems. The missiles approximately costing an additional $690 million. This is according to CSIS, or the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimate. 18 countries operate or plan to operate this American missile system. The list includes the Netherlands, Germany, Japan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Taiwan, Greece, Spain, South Korea, the UAE, Qatar, Romania, Sweden, Poland, and Bahrain. Ukraine was the 19th country to operate the Patriot. It is the most expensive single weapon system that the US sent to Ukraine, and its deployment was supposed to be symbolic. This was the White House's way of showing its commitment to defend Ukraine, showing political support for Ukraine. Same with the Shadow Storm. When the British Defence Minister, Ben Wallace, told the Parliament that the long-range missile was on its way to Ukraine, he said this was Britain's way of enabling Ukraine to defend itself.
Storm Shadow is a long-range, conventional-only precision strike capability. It complements the long-range systems already gifted, including HIMARS and Harpoon missiles, as well as Ukraine's own Neptune cruise missile and longer-range missions elsewhere gifted. The donation of these weapon systems gives Ukraine the best chance to defend themselves against Russia's continued brutality.
Both the Patriot and the Shadow Storm have been hit by Russia. And this too is symbolic, and this raises serious questions. Are these weapons invulnerable, or did Ukraine not do enough to protect them? One thing we've been talking about for a while now is the burn rate of the Russia-Ukraine war. You know how Western weapons, expensive Western weapons, are receiving free firework treatment in Ukraine? The US alone, in fact, has sent weapons worth $23.5 billion to Ukraine. $23.5 billion. And these are weapons from the Defense Department stock. They include tanks, air defenses, rockets, howitzers, manned aircraft. And Ukraine has burnt all of it in 15 months. It has also burnt weapons sent by other countries like the UK, Poland, Germany, France, the Netherlands. It's a long list, but not enough to satisfy Ukraine's weapon appetite, you see. How else will you explain the fact that Ukraine claims it does not have enough weapons left for a counter-offensive? Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky recently visited European cities, meeting leaders, asking for weapons, and upon returning, he is back at it. He is now asking for more weapons on Twitter. More $1 billion Patriot.
З 18 ракет збито. Тому і працюємо постійно над візитами, які принесуть ще можливостей, ще систем Patriot, Iris-T, Кроталь, Hawk, NASAMS.
There is burn rate, also pilferage. You see, weapons are falling into the crack called corruption. We have been telling you about reports of Ukrainian leaders selling Western weapons to smugglers in Europe. Arms shipments are going missing. They are ending up in black markets. And one person at the top end of the supply chain of corruption has been picked up. The Chief Justice. As you may have figured out, he is Ukraine's Chief Justice, and he has been detained for taking bribes. You heard that right, the Chief Justice of the country. For how long can a country riddled with corruption continue fighting? And for how long can the West continue to supply it with weapons? The latter, clearly, has become a victim of its own propaganda and public opinion. And it needs to close a chapter that it opened, but how? With a 5-letter word, and that's peace. The West, or at least a portion of it, appears to be actively working towards it. This headline is a month old. But what it points towards is pretty interesting. France is now trying to get claim share of pie in the peace plan, and one that China is designing, the same one that Belarus is promoting. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, seems to be desperately trying to be Europe's Napoleon for peace. Whether or not the plan will work is currently under question, much like Western weapons post Russia's recent strike in Ukraine. And our next story is about the Quad, the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. Next week, the Quad Summit was to take place in Sydney. But things have changed over the last 24 hours. Have a look at this headline. Australia has cancelled the Quad Summit. Why? Because US President Joe Biden has pulled out. On Tuesday night, he called off his scheduled visit to Australia. In fact, he has also cancelled his visit to Papua New Guinea. Why? To deal with domestic issues related to the debt ceiling. Now, at least that is what the American media is saying at this point. In any case, Biden's withdrawal from the summit has made Australia drop the entire meeting. The announcement was made by the Australian Prime Minister himself, Anthony Albanese. So what happens now is the immediate question. The Australian Prime Minister saying the meeting will now be held in Hiroshima. Remember, Quad leaders will be at the G7 in Hiroshima over the weekend, and reports say Australia is attempting to organize a Quad summit on its sidelines. But the question here is, what led to this dramatic turn of events? And why did the American president have to postpone his visit at the very last moment? Is it really because of the storm over the debt ceiling back home? Or is there more than what meets the eye? Let's try to find out. And to start with, what is the debt ceiling issue really all about? To understand that, we'll have to understand what a debt ceiling is. It's simply the limit placed by the US Congress on the amount of debt that the government can accrue. In other words, it's the maximum amount of money which the Congress allows the federal government to cover its bills. And this is needed because the government generally spends more money than it collects in taxes. So it must take out debt to pay its expenses. And this mechanism was created during the First World War to simplify borrowing. According to reports, the US Congress has lifted the debt limit 78 times since 1960. The debt ceiling was last raised in December 2021 by $2.5 trillion. And that said, over the years, both Republicans and Democrats have used the debt ceiling as a way to force the hands of the president. And that's exactly what's happening right now, by the way. The Biden administration wants to raise the US debt ceiling again. The Democrats are pushing for it, and the Republicans are against it. In fact, they have a majority in the House, so they have refused to raise the debt ceiling until Biden and Democrats agree to reduce spending. And last we checked, emergency talks were held at the White House to end the stalemate and get the debt ceiling raised. The Democrats are hopeful that the two sides may reach consensus soon. But what if that consensus is not arrived at? What if the debt ceiling is not raised? Well, it could lead to the first ever US default. In fact, the country's Treasury Secretary has already warned that the US government may run out of money to pay its obligations as early as the 1st of June. Which, by the way, is the deadline to raise the debt ceiling. And what will happen if the US defaults? Well, it could spark a constitutional crisis that could further unleash an economic and financial catastrophe. If you just try to quantify this crisis, America's gross domestic product could drop 4% and over 7 million workers could lose their jobs. 7 million. In fact, even a brief default could lead to the loss of 2 million jobs. This is according to projections by Moody's Analytics. And then we have the Brookings Institution. It says a default could lead to $750 billion in higher federal borrowing costs over the next decade. Now, just to put this simply, a debt default could harm America's global leadership position and also raise questions about its ability to defend its national security interests. And this is something that America cannot afford right now. Absolutely not. Given how China and Russia could try and take advantage of this on the world stage and embarrass Washington. So is there a way out of this? Yes, there is. Like I said, for this crisis to be resolved, the Republicans and the Democrats will have to strike a compromise, which so far seems unlikely. And here's hoping that they are able to resolve their differences. But at the same time, we cannot help but wonder if this debt ceiling was such a big issue to the extent that Biden had to cancel his visit to Australia. I ask this because he is going to Japan to attend the G7, but not to Australia and Papua New Guinea. We understand the G7 is a big forum, but the Quad also holds significant importance, to say the least, given America's differences with China. My point is simple. How does it make sense to skip one international commitment but attend another? And how does it make sense to prioritize one forum over another? Why not cancel both the visits if the crisis back at home is so overwhelming? The White House clearly has a lot of questions to answer. And our next story is from Pakistan. On Tuesday afternoon, it witnessed a gruesome incident. The killing of a 9-year-old girl. And what's worse, the culprit happens to be a policeman. The incident unfolded at the Swat Public School, Sangota. This is located in Pakistan's northwest Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. And reports say a policeman deployed at the security of the school opened fire at the children when they were returning home. A total of 6 children were injured and a 9-year-old girl lost her life. The attacker was immediately arrested and his weapon was seized, and he claims that he launched the firing by mistake. But the authorities are not buying that claim. They say the cop had some psychological problems which apparently made him commit the crime. We wonder what the truth of the matter really is. In any case, an investigation has been launched now and a final report is awaited. But here's the thing, this incident is striking to say the least. We've heard about terror attacks in Pakistan. We've heard about people attacking the government facilities. But this may be that rare time that we received a report of a policeman targeting civilians in the country. And this incident, of course, reeks of the kind of crimes that unfold in America on a regular basis. Interestingly, the region this crime unfolded in, the Swat Valley, was a stronghold of the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. In fact, it controlled large parts of the region until 2019, when the security forces dismantled its hideouts after military operations. Many are wondering if this attack could be a new tactic adopted by the TTP to target school children. And the timing of this attack, by the way, could not be worse. It comes amid a major political crisis and a severe financial crunch. The politicians are at war. The economy is tanking. We've been telling you about that. Let me just focus on the political drama for now. Have a look at this report. The Punjab government in Pakistan has apparently given Imran Khan a 24-hour deadline to hand over terrorists. Which terrorists? The Punjab government says there are some 30 to 40 terrorists who are hiding at the Lahore residence of the former Prime Minister. You heard that right. Who exactly is it referring to? Well, it's talking about PTI supporters who ran riot immediately after the arrest of the leader. The Punjab police is trying to nab them, and some of them have gone underground. The Punjab government suspects that they are hiding at Imran Khan's residence. And that's not all. Reports say Pakistan's civil leadership and military top brass have agreed to invoke the Army Act and the Official Secrets Act against people suspected of involvement in the May 9 riots. Remember, the Official Secrets Act is a colonial law that was brought by the Britishers in 1923 to keep the people oblivious to some of the government's actions. Even though Pakistan formulated its own constitution, it did not scrap this colonial rule and retained it in its rule book. It now plans to use them against Imran Khan's supporters. And has Imran Khan reacted to these plans? Well, not yet. You see, he is busy claiming that he will be re-arrested. In fact, just a few hours back, he posted a video on Twitter claiming that security forces had surrounded his house while he was addressing the country and that his arrest is imminent. And last we checked, the police were yet to make a move. So will Imran Khan be put behind bars again? Well, who knows? What we do know, though, is that if the Pakistan government instead focuses on the economy, the country would not be in the kind of mess that it currently is in. And this story, of course, is still developing. Watch this space for more updates. You have heard of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but have you heard of the Tungnath temple? One of the world's highest Shiv temples is now tilting, and our next report brings you the details.
You've heard of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but have you heard of the Rudraprayag Tungnath temple? This one, it is one of the world's highest Shiv temples, and it too is tilting, not as drastically as the Leaning Tower, but by 5 to 6 degrees. This is what the ASI, or the Archaeological Survey of India, has found after its recent study. Let's begin with the basics. Where is the temple located? In the Indian state of Uttarakhand. And at 3,680 meters above sea level, this temple is believed to be 1,000 years old. Folklore has it that the temple's foundation stone was laid by Arjun, the third brother of the Pandavas. It is also believed that Lord Ram meditated in this temple. Thousands of pilgrims trek to this temple every year. It is open only for a few months in the summer, and for the rest of the year, the temple remains covered in snow. The structure is now fighting the force of time and nature. It is tilting by 5 to 6 degrees. The smaller structures within the temple by as much as 10 degrees. Could the temple be sinking? Experts are trying to figure that out. For now, glass scales have been installed on the walls of the temple to measure its movement. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
For 3 years, the Wuhan virus pandemic impacted our lives in more ways than one. It made lockdowns the new normal, snatched away lives and livelihoods, and strains of the virus continue to do the rounds. The question is, how prepared are we for the next pandemic? And I ask this at a time when the threat of a new pandemic remains real, to the extent that scientists are already talking about where the next pandemic could start from. This story is about bats and the threat of a looming pandemic. Basically, the competition between bats and human beings. They're competing for resources on territory which has for long been the domain of bats. And this, according to scientists, could trigger the next pandemic. Let me break it down for you. And for that, I need to take you to Brazil. According to Reuters, the country is home to the third highest number of bat species in the world. Some of the most deadly viruses have emerged from bats. Brazil also has more land as compared to any other country. This is where conditions are suitable for a virus to spill over, from bats to human beings. And there's a particular term for this. These are called jump zones. In fact, a Reuters analysis has found that Brazilian jump zones have increased more than 40% over the past 2 decades, 2.5 times faster than similarly risky areas worldwide. And according to scientists, Brazil is likely to be the place of origin of a future pandemic. In fact, rapid rainforest destruction has left 1.5 million square kilometers of land ripe for a bat-borne pathogen to infect human beings. Let's tell you more about the Reuters analysis. There are other parts of the world, like Laos, where scientists have increased testing of bats. They found viruses similar to the Wuhan virus, the virus that triggered the COVID-19 pandemic. In India, jump zones that are quickly expanding are home to 500 million people. That, by the way, is more than anywhere in the world. Fruit-loving bats munch on mangoes around homes in the southern state of Kerala. Remember, the deadly Nipah virus surfaced in Kerala 3 times since the year 2018. And then there is West Africa. And the region tells us what can happen as a result of the hunt for resources in areas that are rich with wildlife. Basically, with more miners clearing trees looking for gold, iron ore, and other minerals, Ebola and Marburg outbreaks have become regular in this part of the world. And this is just a sample of where things stand. What is the way out then? Well, the onus lies on us to protect ourselves. You see, we are increasing the risk of global health disasters by encroaching into bat habitats. In the Amazon rainforest, in fact, a cave like the Tungnath cave, which stretches more than 1.5 kilometers deep and is home to thousands of bats, could be the starting point of the next pandemic. And that's just one cave. There are many more similar caves in the Amazon. And there is rapid deforestation of the Amazon region, which is driving the risks and the threats. Scientists say deforestation causes stress in bats. Some studies, in fact, have found that stressed bats could carry more viruses. And deforestation there is continuing at a steady pace. And with that, there is a growing risk of new and deadly pathogens spilling over and spreading to the rest of Brazil and to the world. Moving on for now, Germany has struck a controversial deal with China. It has sold about 25% stake of the Hamburg port to COSCO. Let me just break it down for you bit by bit. COSCO is the same Chinese state-owned shipping company which is gradually taking over major ports around the world. The deal had sparked both global as well as domestic concern. Yet, the Chancellor Olaf Scholz has gone forward and welcomed the Chinese investment in the crucial port. But you see, the coalition partners are not on the same page. Neither is the European Commission. And why is that? What really are the risks here? First things first, Hamburg Port's Tollerort terminal classifies as critical infrastructure. The port is essential for Germany's economy to function. It has both civil and also military significance. Should it really be owned by foreign rivals? Germany had given Chinese investment the green flag in October 2022. Earlier, it was ready to give away as much as 35% of the stakes, but the decision was under review of late. And ministers from Scholz's coalition voiced concern. So did the Ministries of Economy, Foreign Affairs, Finance, Defense. Key German partners, both within the EU and across the Atlantic, also were not on board. And ultimately, Scholz prioritized business over politics and strategy. The deal, in fact, would boost the local economy, strengthen supply chains, create more jobs. But what about the security threats? After all, it is China that we are talking about. What happens if sensitive information about the port's operation lands into Chinese hands? COSCO is one of the world's biggest port operators. It has stakes in ports across Europe. You see, China is asserting dominance in maritime shipping. It owns as many as 96 ports in at least 53 countries. Have a look at this map. It shows a sea route of the Belt and Road project. It connects China to Southeast Asia, Africa, even Europe. And Chinese companies now own all of the major ports along the route. There is the port of Singapore, port of Hambantota in Sri Lanka, port of Djibouti, port of Aden in Yemen, port of Sokhna in Egypt, port of Haifa in Israel, and the port of Piraeus in Greece. And now have a look at this map. It shows the world's top container ports according to cargo capacity. And Beijing either controls or has major investments in all 15 of them. There is the port of Tianjin, Qingdao, Shanghai, Ningbo, Zhoushan, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Xiamen, port of Hong Kong, Singapore, and then there is Kaohsiung in Taiwan, Port Klang in Malaysia, Busan in South Korea, Jebel Ali in Dubai, Antwerp in Belgium, and Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Chinese state-owned enterprises hold stakes in 5 US ports, and this includes joint ventures at Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Seattle. CM Port holds a minority stake at Miami and Houston, and now the Hamburg port is also added to the list. It will be the last of the major seaports in the Nordic range in which China has showed interest. 1/3 of the goods handled at the Hamburg port already come from or go to China. In fact, China has been Germany's biggest trade partner for the past 7 years. The trade between the two rose to a record $320 billion in 2022. And simply put, the EU's largest economy is hyper-dependent on Beijing. Earlier this month, Scholz himself warned that China is increasingly becoming a competitor and rival for the European Union. But at the same time, he is seeking closer cooperation with Beijing. Berlin is sending mixed signals after all, and Scholz is crossing his coalition members. If there is one clear winner in this scenario, it is China. It has yet another critical port under its belt, and Beijing is enjoying strategic dominance without having to deploy a single soldier. Could China use this to strangle the world in a looming wartime play? Take Sri Lanka, for example. The Hambantota port is a classic display of the Chinese debt trap. With Sri Lanka bankrupt and politically unstable, China took hold of the terminal in 2017 for 99 years. In August 2022, a Chinese survey ship docked at Hambantota. Sri Lanka and China termed it a scientific research vessel. It was staying for a couple of weeks to track satellites and missiles, but it sent alarm bells ringing. Consider the facts. 1/3 of the ports China has invested in have hosted and resupplied PLA's military vessels. From ship to shore, COSCO employs at least 1,000 CCP commissars, 1,000 others working as crew members or special cadres. All of this pointing in one direction. China can very well use a port investment for military exploitation, and Germany seems to have happily welcomed it in one of its main ports. Will this blow in its face is the immediate question. What comes to your mind when I say Cannes? The Cannes Film Festival, is it not? It is the film festival that draws eyeballs every year, particularly its red carpet. And over the years, it has become more of a fashion festival than a film festival. And this year, the film festival is taking place from the 16th to the 27th of May. But what really is the history of this film festival? Let's just take a walk down memory lane. The year is 1938 and tensions are building up to World War II. Some countries assemble in Italy. What for? To attend the Venice Film Festival. Italy, Sweden, the UK, France, Germany, Brazil, Switzerland, Poland, Mexico, the US, Japan, South Africa, and Belgium. And it's time to announce the awards at the Venice Film Festival. The jury unanimously chooses an American film, but does it win is the immediate question. And the answer is no. Any guesses why? Because of political pressure. And from whom, you wonder? Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. And these men, of course, need no introduction. One ruled Germany and the other ruled Italy. And as history has it, both were flag bearers of fascism. And who won the accolade after all? It was a film called Pilot, directed by Goffredo Alessandrini, and Olympia by director Leni Riefenstahl. Both won. And Pilot was an Italian war drama, while Olympia was a sports film on Nazi propaganda. Do you know what the winning cup was called? It was called the Mussolini Cup. And what happened next? The UK the US and France were appalled. They quit the event in response. It was then that the idea of an alternative film festival was conceived. Its main purpose was to preserve art away from any influence of political maneuvering. On your screen here, you see a picture of a man. Who is he? Philippe Lanka. He is the French representative who conceptualized an alternative film festival that later on came to be known as the Cannes Film Festival. Thus, in 1939, a festival was ready to be announced, and now it was time to pick a place to host that event. And among the cities in contention was the coastal city on the southern tip of France. And the beauty of this resort town was timeless. And hence, Cannes was finalized. However, because of the war in Europe, the festival was stalled, and as a result of this, the first edition of the film festival was out in 1946. It featured 19 countries, an international jury, and was an invite-only event. In fact, till date, the film festival continues to be an invite-only event. Now, do you know who was the first Indian to debut at the film festival? It wasn't Aishwarya Rai or Sonam Kapoor, of course. It was this man, and his name is Chetan Anand. He was the first man to win a grand prize at the film festival. Chetan Anand happens to be the elder brother of Dev Anand, one of the most beloved, charismatic, and accomplished actors in the history of Indian cinema. 75 years ago, it was Chetan Anand's film that took Indian cinema on the global stage. The film was called Neecha Nagar. And it brought home the very first Palme d'Or in 1946, the highest prize awarded at that film festival. In fact, till date, this happens to be the only Indian film to have won the highest honor at that film festival. What's noteworthy is that Chetan Anand struggled with finances to produce this film. And despite its historic win, it is often not as celebrated as many of its contemporaries. And apart from Anand's movie, in 2022, Oscar-nominated documentary, All That Breathes, by the Indian filmmaker Shaunak Sen, won the Golden Eye. It is the highest honor for a documentary at the Cannes Film Festival. In fact, this film festival is often equated with a fashion show. And with time, it occupies our social media feed merely because of the clothing appearances and all the buzz surrounding the festival. But the truth is, it has a historic tale to tell and is often considered to be one of the highest honors in cinema. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground? At Gravitas, we don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called Yo1 Wellness Center. The Yo1 Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com